the 2015-16 academic year, over 38,000 Texas public school children were retained in grade. That means they stayed in the same grade for 2 consecutive years. The cost of that extra year of schooling, based on average Texas expenditure per pupil, was over $384 million. One has to ask, is grade retention an effective educational intervention? Does it increase or decrease a child's future educational performance or probability of earning a high school diploma? That is the question my colleagues and I sought to answer. There's been decades of research on the effects of grade retention. However, strong empirical evidence of the effects of grade retention has been lacking, especially in terms of long-term educational attainment. The source problem is that in prior studies, the methods have not allowed unambiguous answers to whether grade retention is a cause of subsequent performance, or is it merely a marker of pre-existing differences between children who are subsequently retained or promoted. We all know that children who are retained and promoted differ. They differ primarily in academic achievement, but also on a host of other variables, including family, income, and educational level, child attentional capacities, and behavioral performance. Perhaps it's these pre-existing differences between retained and promoted children that account for differences subsequently down the line in terms of their educational performance. Absent an experimental design in which one would randomly assign children to be retained or promoted, I don't think we can do that study, the best approach to answering this question would be to conduct a longitudinal study with a large sample of beginning first grade students, to follow those students for at least 14 years, and also, prior to any child being retained, to obtain extensive data on a whole range of variables that are associated both with grade retention and with subsequent academic performance. Importantly, one would need to use sophisticated statistical methods to effectively match the promoted and the retained students on these pre-existing variables. That is the approach we took. With funding from the National Institutes of Health, in 2001, we recruited 784 beginning first grade students attending one of 3 Texas public school districts. Collectively, the demographics of those 3 districts was comparable to the first grade population of students in Texas. The students were selected on the basis of scoring below average on a test of literacy in English or Spanish at the end of kindergarten. Prior to any student being retained, we obtained extensive data on a wide range of variables, and then we annually assessed and tracked these children for 14 years. Of the 734 students for whom data on grade retention in the elementary years was available, 256, or over a third, of the students had been retained at least once in the elementary grades, whereas 478 had been continuously promoted. Results. Let's look at the success of these students in graduating from high school. On the whole, after 14 years, 477 students had attained a high school diploma. 21 had earned a GED, and 110 had dropped out of school. We found that those children who had been retained in the elementary grades were more than twice as likely to have dropped out of school than their matched but promoted peers. This finding was somewhat surprising because our earlier studies had found no harm to students educationally or in terms of their motivation all the way until the beginning of grade 9. So what happens? Well, typically, a student who's been retained in grade turns 16 years of age prior to grade 10. They are 1 year further at age 16 from graduation than their same age but promoted peers. At 16 years in Texas, one can, under certain conditions, legally leave school and work full-time. It seems that many retained students at age 16 decide to pursue these options rather than to persevere until graduation. Given the high cost of failure to earn a diploma for the student and for society, it is imperative that we find alternatives to grade retention. It is also important that we rethink grade 9. Grade 9 is a pivotal year for students to drop out of school, especially retained students. At this critical juncture, students need increased academic and social supports to keep them on track to graduation. Thank you.